wise congregants mentioned that she felt like she was on an elimination diet, ridding herself of almost everything that formerly constituted a full life. Anyone who's ever tried to better their physical health by eliminating toxins can attest that the key to successful recovery is careful planning and discernment about how and when to add back what has been taken away. An elimination diet. Making choices about how and when to add back what has been taken away. We would do well to adhere to similar advice where our spiritual health is concerned. In various Zoom gatherings, I've heard a number of people say that they have found they are happier with less. I had heard rumblings of this nature concerning the collective busyness of our lives. I had heard longing for less words and more silence, for less meetings and more meaning, pleas for less accumulation and more sustainability. But aside from some physical downsizing and closet purging, deciding what needed to be eliminated from our lives for our own good was a daunting prospect, not one any of us had really taken seriously until now. I was given this poem this week. It's called Potbound by Diana Chapman Walsh. He asks me a question I've never considered before. When is it that you know you have to go someplace else? At first I think, I don't know. I don't go. Never have. Just try to please, do what's expected, bloom where I'm planted. But then the answer germinates in the soul soil of my mind. I see a potted plant, rooted but protruding from the drainage hole in the bottom to go, bursting forth to grow. After weeks or months or years of putting down its root system, of consolidating its power, husbanding its resources, it has reached a crisis point, lost its equilibrium. It has to go. It has to grow. I run down to the cellar and root around for a larger pot, a little larger only, so my vulnerable plant won't wilt in the unstructured vastness of a new world without apparent walls. I have to smash the old pot to rescue my restless plant. Impacted root system now naked in my hand, a small sacrifice, but a radical operation to deliver the plant from death. I have to smash the old pot to rescue my relentless, restless plant. When is it that I know I have to go someplace else? When I have to grow or die? We have some decisions to make about how much pressure we will put on ourselves and on each other to return to normal when normal becomes a possibility. Diana Chapman Walsh's poem might help in our discernment. Consider these questions. What roots extend beyond your current pot? What shape might your new pot take? How will you bloom where you are planted? I think we're slowly catching on to the idea that there are deep spiritual gifts available to us right now that we've not always taken the time to recognize. Now, with more space to reflect, we have an opportunity to internalize time-worn wisdom in new and deeper ways. It is the first Sunday after Easter morning in our tradition, and Jesus appears several days after his tomb was discovered to be empty. He enters the house where the disciples were locked inside, fearing for their safety. This is from the book of John, chapter 20, verses 19 through 23. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his sides, and the disciples rejoiced when they saw him. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Creator has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." The disciples were on lockdown. They were wondering where to turn in a world turned upside down. When would it be safe to return to daily life? Could they return to daily life? Who and how would they know where they were going without their leader, Jesus, to guide them? And his first words to the disciples are to be at peace. Jesus says, because although much has changed, certain essentials will always remain. Jesus promised that God would be with God's people to the very ends of the earth, and no matter what changes, that remains constant. So he showed the disciples the marks on his hands and his side, acknowledging his suffering, acknowledging their suffering. And then he said again, "Peace be with you." And once they had collected themselves, he breathed on them the breath of the Holy Spirit, and disciples, "It's time now," he said, "to go back into the world and heal divisions, to be the bearers of goodwill, to be the bearers of God's will." The text goes on to describe the disciple we refer to as Doubting Thomas, also known as the twin. He was not present when Jesus showed up the first time, and he could not believe what had happened until he saw Jesus for himself. And so the Gospel of John continues in chapter 20, verses 24 through 30. A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them, although the doors were shut. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your fingers here and see my hands. Reach out and put your hand on my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord, my God." And Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." Are there things you've had trouble believing until you've seen them for yourself? Are you willing to smash the old pots to deliver yourself to new life? How will we take what we've learned from this time unlike any other and create for ourselves a defensible space which we have determined is necessary if we are to grow? I'm noticing two things in the midst of this worldwide shutdown. The hunger for what is real is rumbling louder than ever before. And we want desperately to drink from the well of its wisdom. And yet, most days the message of God's presence and peace is still very difficult to hear amid the clatter of the news and the clang of the to-dos and shoulds that have sprung up like weeds after a spring rain. I'm frustrated with myself that I can't carve out more space, more silence, more time to hear the heartbeat of truth, especially now when it seems like we have nothing but time. But alas, the empty tomb filled quickly with technological advances and advice from experts, and I get repeatedly sucked into their siren song and away from the still small voice of God at a time when I know I need it most. At the end of today's gospel lesson, Jesus says, it's one thing to have belief because of what we can see, but even greater to believe that which we cannot yet fully see. Returning to a healthy life post-pandemic will require immense fortitude to resist the temptation to stock our spiritual shelves and fill the hours of our days with anything less than exactly what is essential and life-giving. Some things that have gone must remain gone for good, for our own good, for the good of our planet. Jesus stands in the doorways of our locked houses and exclaims the message for which there is no substitute. God's peace is with us. God's Spirit is upon us. And the breath of the Holy Spirit has blessed us to become a blessing to others.